We are from Group 4. We are from the A115A. Today we are going to present about our presentation about inflation and unemployment Malaysia. So this is my team members. Then is Kanda, Mama Anif, Sri, which is me, and Jewa Natasha. So we are going to present about introduction, analyzing current macroeconomics problems of selected country, how the country solve the problem, inflation and unemployment, and conclusion. So I will pass to Tasha to present.
Okay, now I will talk about introduction. In introduction, according to the International Monetary Fund, the economy of Malaysia is the third largest in the Southeast Asia in terms of GDP per capita and the 34th largest in the world. Malaysia is one of the most open economies in the world with a trade to GDP ratio averaging over 130% since 2010. Openness to trade and investment has been instrumental in employment creation and income growth, with about 40% of jobs in Malaysia linked to export activities. The Malaysian economy registered a positive growth of 5.0% in the first quarter of 2022. Fourth quarter in 2021 was 3.6%. This was mainly supported by improving domestic demand as economic activities continue to normalize with the easing of containment measures. The improvement also reflects the recovery in the job market, with the unemployment rate declining further to 4.1%. Fourth quarter in 2021 was 4.3%, as well as continued policy support. Strong external demand amid the continued upcycle in global technology provided further lift to growth. On the supply side, services and manufacturing sector continued to drive economic growth, expanding by 6.5% and 6.6% respectively. On the quarter-on-quarter seasonally adjusted basis, the economy grew by 3.9%. Fourth quarter in 2021 was 4.6%. Headline inflation moderated to 2.2% during the fourth quarter in 2021 was 3.2%. This mainly reflects the smaller contribution from dissipating base effect from lower domestic retail fuel price last year, and the absence of the base effect from electricity tariff rebate implemented in 2020. Core inflation increased to 1.7% during the fourth quarter 2021 was 0.8%. Next, I will give to the next presenter.
Thank you, Tasha. Next, I will talk about analyzing current macroeconomic problem of Malaysia. Labour market conditions also provide some indication of the extent of recovery achieved so far. Before the pandemic, the unemployment rate was hovering around 3.3% but increased to 5.1% in 2020. By early 2022, this rate had declined and established around 4.1 to 4.2% in terms of the composition of the unemployed. Workers in the 15 to 24 age group account for the largest share despite a slight decline in the past 2 years. The weakness in the labour market is also reflected in the sharp decline in wages experienced in 2020. Median salaries and wages declined by 50%. This decline has been particularly steep for younger workers 20 to 29 and older workers 60 to 64. However, given that the unemployment rate only declined slightly from late 2021 to early 2022, median salaries and wages are unlikely to have fully recovered to pre-pandemic levels. The level of job creation is still about one-third below levels observed before the pandemic. Also, though, job creation in the manufacturing sector has rebounded, the service sector remains a laggard. Next is the annual CPI value show that Malaysia's transition from a deflationary 1.2% economy in 2020 to an inflationary 1.9% plus 2.5% in 2021. Looking at the price changes in the CPI components, the inflation in 2021 was driven by sharp increases in transport and food costs. The increase in transport costs would have been higher without fuel subsidies for RON 95 petrol and diesel. This can be seen from the increasing gap between the prices for these fuel products and the price of RON 97 petrol, which is not subsidized. With the relatively high weightage of the transport and food costs in the CPI, the inflation rate is likely to be higher in Malaysia in 2022. Recent inflation data suggests that inflation has remained moderate on the whole, but food prices have risen significantly. Comparing 2022 to 2021, the price of goods has risen by 3.6% in January 2022, 3.7% in February 2022, and 4% in March 2022. Next is types of unemployment and inflation. Diagram shows about equilibrium in the labor market. In a labor market with flexible wages, the equilibrium will occur at wage V and quantity QE, where the number of people looking for jobs, shown by S, equals the number of jobs available, shown by D. Diagram shows about falling demand for labor. In a labor market where wages do not decline, a fall in demand for labor from DO to D1 leads to a decline in the quantity of labor demand at the original wage WO from QO to Q2. These workers will want to work at the prevailing wage WO but will not be able to find jobs. Next, I will pass to the next presenter.
And beyond it, next I will present about demand pull inflation. So SS is the aggregate supply curve and the DD is the aggregate demand curve. OK is the equilibrium price and the OQ is the equilibrium output. Exogenous causes shift the demand curve to the right to D1 D1. Therefore, at the current price OK, the demand increases by Q2. However, the supply is OQ. Hence, the excess demand for Q2 puts pressure on the price, increasing it to OP1. Therefore, there is a near equilibrium at this price, where demand equals supply. So next is cost push inflation. So supply can also cause inflationary pressure. If the aggregate demand remains unchanged but the aggregate supply falls due to exogenous causes, then the price level increases. Equal to the graph above, the equilibrium price is OK and the equilibrium output is OK. If the aggregate supply falls, then the supply curve has a shift left to which S1 is 1. Now at the price OP, the demand is OQ, but the supply is OQ2, which is lesser than OQ. Therefore, the prices are pushed high to a new equilibrium is reached at OP1. At this point, there is no excess demand. So the causes of employment and inflation. Causes of unemployment is low-end job. Second is hard to find a suitable job. It is for fresh graduate because most of them are picky when it comes to job selection. So inflation, the causes of inflation is increase in oil price, which we cannot avoid. Second is removal of utilities subsidies, and the last one is supply side constraints. This happened during lockdown. So next, I will talk about the impact of inflation for a country social and economically. So among the effect of inflation are widening income gaps between the poor and the rich, which can contribute to higher rate of poverty. It is because the government has been controlling the price since the past few months. This is meant to help the people, but at the same time, if the ceiling price is imposed for too long, it may harm the industry, especially producers. Thus, when the supply is disrupted, the pressure will be on the price. When the company is unable to sustain itself, it will have the risk of bankruptcy, which will contribute to higher unemployment rates and lower economic growth. When stagflation occurs, the government will have a difficult time deciding which policy will be most effective in controlling the economy. So next, I will pass to next presenter.
Okay, okay, thank you, Anis. This is my part about how the country solve the problem in inflation and unemployment. First one, monetary policy. The Central Bank of Malaysia Bank Negara Malaysia (BNM) use interest rate targeting for the time being. By using monetary policy, BNM can increase or decrease money supply as well as the interest rate. BNM will set monetary policy based on different economic situation, whether what the inflation or recession, by increase or decrease the interest rate in order to achieve macroeconomic objective. Besides changing the interest rate, BNM will be impressing open market instrument to reduce or adding money supply in the market by selling or buying securities of our statutory reserve ratio is an instrument to reserve the money supply. Next, fiscal policy. Unfortunately, fiscal policy will be used during recession, which is tax cuts and increased government spending in order to increase demand, and economic growth will contractionary policy will be used during booms, which is increased taxation and lower government spending to reduce demand and reduce inflation. The government may decide to increase borrowing and spend more on infrastructure spending. The idea is that this increase in government spending creates an injection of money into economics and helps to create jobs. There may also be a multiplier effect, where the initial injection into economy causes a further round of higher spending. This increase in aggregate demand can help the economies to get out of recession. The last part, conclusion, and pass to the last presenter.
Okay, now I will talk about conclusion. For conclusion, unemployment is an important statistic used by the government to measure the health of a company. Despite Malaysia recovering economic status, it cannot be denied that such a loss will take some time to be redeemed, so all of us need to work together in order to reduce the rate of recession. Unemployment before it will get worse in the future. Other than that, inflation can lead to income or wealth redistribution, which means money is moved from one group to another, and it also affects the economy because it impacts the cost of living. I think that's all from us. Thank you for listening.